welcome to 2024. My first interview for the year. Thank you, Emmanuel, for coming on and talking about your new book. We're going to be talking about how brands react to the digital customer, because that's the part of the essence behind Emmanuel's book. Emmanuel, tell us where people can find you.
Tim, first, thank you for having me on the show. And for people to find me, the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. And my name is simply Emmanuel Probst. And on my profile page, of course, you can reach out to me via email, and you have details about my different occupations and publications.
Excellent. So we're going to talk about your new book, which is called how do I pronounce it? Because
Assemblage or Assemblage, either way works.
So we're going to talk about your book, Assemblage, which when you define what that means in the book, because I didn't know, it's a perfect metaphor for what you talk about.
Yeah, an assemblage is terminology that's inspired from winemaking. That is, when we make a wine or brandy or cognac or whiskey, the winemaker does so by combining dozens, sometimes more than 100 different samples. And so you pick and choose from various aging processes and grapes and barrels and so on and so forth. And by doing so, you create a product that is unique and on brand and stands out from competition. And that's exactly how I believe that we should build brands. And the learning here, there are many learnings in that metaphor. It is that the product evolves over time. So that's really important when you assemble for a whiskey, just like when you create a brand, you have to consider what you have to play with today. That's one thing. And just as importantly, how is the brand going to evolve, or how is the whiskey going to evolve over time, over the next 3, 5, 7 years? Also, another key learning outcome is it is not necessarily the brand or the winemaker with the most money that wins. In fact, most of the time it isn't. It really has to do, and that's why the book is called The Art and Science of Brand Transformation. There's a science to it, but there is also an art to it. And again, it is not because you have the most money that you win at the end.
And what was the inspiration behind writing the book?
Well, the inspiration is, I think, we're overwhelmed with brands and products. And I think that if you reflect on the old adage from Wanamaker, that is, I waste half of my money on advertising. The problem is I don't know which half. For all the promise of programmatic advertising and digital advertising and all those great things, well, nothing has changed. Meaning advertisers are still wasting about half of their money on advertising. And I think there's a better way to do business. I think there's a better way to build brands that come at a premium, that people are somewhat more loyal to, and brands that are more sustainable. And that was the starting point for the book. And I think the way to create those brands is not to just sell products, but to create brands that transform people and the world they live in. And what I mean by this is, first and foremost, for marketers to appreciate that nobody wakes up in the morning dreaming about your brand. Very, very few brands command that type of fandom. Really, people want to become someone else, and your brand is in a supporting role. So, Assemblage, the art and science of brand transformation, that means brands can no longer just sell products. Brands must transform people in the world they live in. And the book shows you how to create transformative brands for people, for their community, and for the world at large, while, of course, making a profit, growing your business.
So I'm just making a note of what you said. What I get when I've read the book, and what I love about it is that you this is a difficult subject. And what you do is that there's probably more case studies than theory. The other thing that I like about it, which really jumps out the page. Now, I don't know what it is, but you have a great sense of humor.
Thank you.
And there's many a times when I was reading your book where I was chuckling to myself. I was like chuckling to myself because and the thing is you also you don't hold the stuff back. You know, it's a bit like what you just said to me, which I've just written it down, which is nobody wakes up in the morning thinking about your brand. And sometimes we need to get that sort of written punch in the face to actually recognize that you go, yeah, of course, yeah, because I'm really excited about my brand because it pays my mortgage. But the thing is, you're not, and nobody else is. And that's one of the things that we have to recognize, isn't it?
Well, and Tim, what we call the curse of knowledge is, as a marketer, you know way more about your brand and way more about your competition than 99.9% of people out there. And you spend way more time analyzing and making those decisions. What I mean by this is if you're a CPG brand, people spend 7 to 10 seconds in the aisle. They spend 1.3 seconds making a decision on your product. And most of the time, they repurchase a product they're already familiar with anyway. And what I'm trying to say is, with the exception of our listeners today, you, Tim, and I, very few people, if any, stand before a shelf of 150 SKUs of breakfast cereals and think through it for the next 5 minutes. And very few people have such extensive knowledge about different types of toothpaste and different types of tires and whatever else we sell. People really don't want to think about this. What people want is, again, to be transformed. Who am I and who do I want to become? And in that quest, how is the brand going to support me, and what is the brand that is going to best support me in that quest? That's really what people want to achieve.
You talk in the book about, because you just talked about standing in an aisle, but you also talk about the infinite scroll.
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming is that you can just sit there and just keep scrolling.
Correct. Past. Yeah, so that's the infinite scroll is that technology basically, whereby if you look at LinkedIn or Instagram or frankly any other social media platform, you can keep scrolling all night and all day because the algorithm will keep feeding you with content. And there are some quotes in the book from the gentleman who invented this technology. And now he goes around the world trying to get people less addicted to scrolling, basically. And he's saying, oh my God, when I invented this technology, it was simply so that people don't have to click from page 1 to page 2 to page 3. And what a monster have I created. And monster is not the word he uses, but that's just to say that he realizes now that many people developed addiction to scrolling. And again, the point here, I mean, I have nothing against scrolling, we all scroll. The point here is what is meaningful to you, what is fulfilling to you, and what is the information that matters the most.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Now, you talk in the book about the 3 dimensions of the assemblage method.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you talk us through that?
Yeah, think of it as me, my world, and the world. And that is the personal, the social, and the cultural dimensions. So
that's me, my world, and the world.
Correct. Yeah, that's an easy way to put it. So you have 3 parts in this book. Again, the book is about create brands that transform people and the world we live in. People, that's me. That's your personal identity project. That is, who am I and who do I want to become? And then my world, that's my community. That's people around me. That's going to my local coffee shop and going to the school and the activity center and all that. So that's your social environment. And then the world at large, that's your macro context. that is the world we live in. And that has to do with the circular economy and sustainability and upcycling and recycling. And so not just sustainability issues on how to ideally take care of the planet, but also about labor practices and about upcycling and recycling that is giving a second life to products. So those are some of the techniques, some of the methods I touch on in the third part of the book.
So go into detail in terms of, or give us an example of what you mean by, and how that works with your assemblage method. So explain to people what you talk about in the book on those three areas.
Yeah. So in each chapter, you have techniques, if you will, and tips on how to create those transformative brands on those three levels. So just to be clear, a brand doesn't have to tick all the boxes, right? You can choose to transform people, and you can choose to create brands that transform their community, and you can choose to create brands that transform the world. It's fine if you do all three, but you don't have to. And so in each section of the book, I give directions on how to do this. So let's take an example in section 1, how brands can transform me. Again, that's taking people from who they are to who they want to become. And here in chapter 4 is it's not business, it's personal. So the theory behind this chapter is to say we as individuals are lonely in our personal lives and we're overwhelmed with choices as consumers. The solution and the directions I give in this chapter is about brand personification, how to humanize your organization, your brand, and its products in the mind of their customers so that you can fulfill this need for attention and combat this loneliness that people have in their personal lives. So a brand that does this well is Petco, for example, in the US, or it is Cadbury in the UK, that both have programs to directly and indirectly combat loneliness, and in this process, create better brands and sell products.
Yeah, there's an advert for Cadbury's in the UK where the son is talking to the father and they're on the mobiles. So it's very like modern, and the father's in the car, and the father, you find out, has lost his job and he's gone for a job interview. And the son says, "There's something for you in the glove compartment." He opens the glove compartment and there's a bar of chocolate.
Yeah, so you got it. See,
It's a beautiful metaphor for modern day working. They're not, and the answer and the antidote to all of those things is a bar of chocolate.
So this, thank you, Tim. This perfectly exemplifies the assemblage method and how Cadbury provides you with is a brand and provides you with products that take you from who you are to who you want to become. What I mean by this, notice that there is nothing in there about the quality of the chocolate and the flavor and what have you, because those are functional attributes. And I'm sure Cadbury produces good chocolate. So do another 75 brands out there. What you spoke about here, the emotional driver in this ad is this life stage this individual is going, losing his job. And it's also this communion, this communitas with his son. And it's Cadbury providing this solution. Remember what we said at the beginning of this conversation. The brand is here to support you. The brand is not the hero. In this ad that you're describing, Tim, the hero is not the bar of chocolate. The hero is this individual going through these life stages. Cadbury, the product, the brand, helps taking him to who he wants to become, help him transform into this next stage of his life, and helps him connect with his son. That's what's important here. That's what's valuable. The quality of the chocolate in and of itself is very secondary.
But it's it's such a shift, isn't it? From whereas in the past, Cadbury's would have said, "Here's a bar of chocolate. It's got these features and these functions. It may have this amount of cocoa, and we don't care. We're just going to buy it because
no." Because those are functional attributes that everyone else is going to compete on. If Cadbury starts saying, and they can, well, here's a bar of chocolate with raisins, here's a bar of chocolate with cranberries. Okay, that's great. You just push to market the 75th flavor of chocolate bars that's going to be available in the UK. So if you do that, you compete on functional attributes, it's very hard to stand out, and it's going to be very hard to command a premium for the product. With an emotional driver like the one you described, that's a much deeper meaning. That's something that's way more fulfilling to people than having raisins or cranberries in their chocolate bar.
So why do you think that we love anti-heroes, villains, and saviors today?
Yeah, well, the traditional archetype that we use in pop culture and in advertising is the one of the hero. So Batman, Superman, and the likes. The shortcoming with those guys is two things. Number one, they're inspirational but not necessarily relatable. And what I mean by this is most of us cannot jump from one building to another. And the second shortcoming, we see this in Hollywood here, and I'm based in Los Angeles. You see this in the box office. People are getting tired of superhero movies. Almost all the superhero movies that have been launched over the last, in 2023, failed, basically, did not meet expectations for the studios. So the alternative to this archetype of the hero that we saw in pop culture, in movies, and of course, subsequently in advertising and in branding, are those archetypes of the anti-heroes, the villains, and the saviors. And an anti-hero is basically someone who can do something heroic, yet is flawed. So think of James Bond, right? James Bond is going to save the world from evil, yet he is very challenged with alcohol and substances and the other gender. We side with him, though, because he strives to improve. So that is the description of the anti-hero. And those archetypes are so powerful in advertising, again, because they're relatable. A villain is the same thing. Of course, he's the bad guy, but they're sympathetic in nature. And the savior is someone like Jeff Bezos, who is telling you, well, if we cannot live on Earth, I'm going to take you to Mars, for example. So the savior brings some hope. And really the point is heroes, villains, saviors, anti-heroes, they're all relatable and sympathetic in their own ways. In marketing, what's important is the consumer should be positioned as the hero, not the brand. The brand is not the hero. The brand can be positioned ideally as the villains, the saviors, the anti-heroes, something that's relatable, something for people to latch on and to make them the hero.
So we got about 1.5 minutes left, and I'm going to ask you the broadest question of that. So I'm sorry about that. But what can a brand do to connect with a digital consumer?
Start with the emotion. The digital is only a channel. All this technology, call me old school if you want, but you just illustrated this point with this Cadbury ad that you mentioned, Tim. What I mean by this is it's great to have great platforms to reach people on their mobile device, on their TV, on their tablet, in their sleep if we want to. And we can push advertising and earn media and own media. We can do all those things. That's fine. Start with the core message. What is the emotion your brand is going to deliver? What is this promise of transformation your brand delivers to its audience? That is, what does your brand do to make a positive impact on the target audience, on those consumers, and on the world? From there, how can you build a differentiator and therefore command a premium? And then we can worry about the digital, the messaging, how you activate the omnichannel strategies, which all this is very important. I do this for my clients day in, day out. I'm not discounting the importance of great media planning, great graphic assets, design assets, and omni-channel marketing and the funnel and all those things. But I'm saying that you need to start with the core proposition, that is, what am I enabling for people that my competitors do not?
Fantastic. Emmanuel, really appreciate you coming on today and talking about your book. Where can people find a copy?
Yeah, the book's available on Amazon. You can purchase the hard copy. You can also purchase the digital edition. There we go. And last but not least, you can listen to the book on Audible. And great news, I'm not the one reading the book. So, but it's really a great way to grab this book. And here you can see that it illustrates what we said before. What's important is the substance. We spoke about the assemblage metaphor and how to create brands that transform people. Now, the way you choose to consume the book, it's entirely up to you. You can do old-fashioned hard copy. I personally love books.
I love books,
read on a tablet, or you can listen to it while driving or going to the gym. That's completely
and just so people recognize it, it's the book behind you with the purple cover, isn't it?
That's the one.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
And people can get hold of you on LinkedIn if they want to connect with you, can't they?
That is correct. And in fact, I encourage people to do so. I read my own emails. So you're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a note, any comments or questions you may have, and I will be delighted to reply to your message.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on today, Emmanuel, and talking about your book. As I say, I loved it. I thought it was great. And I'm going to say again, because it's a great informative book. I got loads out of it, and there's loads of case studies, and you do have a great sense of humor.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for having me on the show today.
You're welcome.
And for giving me this opportunity to connect with your community.